On my 29th birthday, my husband handed me divorce papers. "Happy birthday," he said, his voice echoing through the restaurant where I had worked for the past 2 years. My mother-in-law sat at the head of the table with a satisfied smile, and my brother-in-law's wife raised her phone, ready to film my reaction like it was some kind of entertainment, to send it to my husband's new girlfriend. I looked at the papers, calmly signed my name, then lifted my head and said, "Thank you." No one knew that just a few days earlier, I had already prepared for this exact moment. 3 days before my birthday, I came downstairs for water in the middle of the night. The yellow kitchen light cast broken streaks across the wooden table. I thought I'd be the only one up that late, but Nathan was already there. Leaning over, both elbows on the table, sheets of white paper spread out before him like the map of some plan. Next to him, a red pen lay tilted, its tip resting on the page, leaving behind short, precise lines like the heartbeat of someone calculating. The light from the lamp reflected off his glasses, casting a cold gleam that revealed a focus bordering on predatory. He didn't even notice me until the wooden floor creaked under my foot. When he heard me, he looked up, and I caught a flash of panic on his face. Just seconds later, he quickly gathered the papers, slid them into an envelope that read, "Happy Birthday," in silver letters, with tiny butterflies fluttering around. He smoothed the flap and sealed it with a motion that was slow, but firm. The envelope looked elegant, thoughtful, like a gift from a loving husband. "Good evening, sweetheart," he said. "Good morning, sweetheart." Nathan's voice was sweet and fake enough to make my skin crawl. He had never called me sweetheart like that before. Usually, he avoided calling me by name at all, and would just say my wife or she when talking to others. I poured myself water, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you working on?" He gave a soft smile, voice slow and full of mystery. "I picked this out for you. It's really special. No one in the family knows yet that secrecy piqued my curiosity." In 2 years of marriage, Nathan had never prepared any surprise for me. He was always busy, even forgot my birthday last year. But that night, his voice sounded sincere. "This will change everything. We deserve something meaningful." I believed him. I thought maybe, finally, he had come to appreciate all my efforts, the wife who tried so hard to fit in with his family. Maybe he realized how I'd tried to find a more decent job after being laid off during the pandemic. Or maybe he saw how much I loved him, even while his family constantly criticized me. The idea that he had planned something special for my 29th birthday gave me a sense of relief. I was so hopeful, I even overlooked the way he said "we" instead of "you." The next 2 days, I noticed strange changes. Lillian, who rarely ever called me, suddenly asked about my schedule, her voice oddly gentle. And Claire, Grayson's wife, Nathan's brother, who had ignored me at every family gathering, now cheerfully offered to help plan my birthday. They said they wanted to host it at Moretti's, where I worked, so they could honor every aspect of your life. It sounded touching, but I didn't know why the phrase sent a chill down my spine. I saw her exchange a subtle glance with Nathan. They had this silent way of communicating that completely excluded me. When I asked if everything was okay, Nathan just smiled. "They're planning a surprise for your birthday." Her sudden enthusiasm made me suspicious, but I brushed it off, focusing instead on what seemed like their growing acceptance. Nathan's excitement about the party only grew. He kept checking his phone, responding to messages with a satisfied smirk. When I tried to peek, he tilted the screen away and said in that same mysterious tone, "It's a surprise. You'll see. This will be your most memorable birthday ever." He avoided eye contact and hid his phone every time a new message came in. But I didn't feel suspicious. I was used to comforting myself with hope. I thought maybe he was secretly planning something sweet, maybe a small gift, or just a warm family dinner. The night before my birthday, Nathan called to confirm everything. "Make sure you wear something comfortable tomorrow," he said, voice low and slow. "You'll want to feel at ease for what I've prepared." That sentence carried a tone of anticipation that I, naively hopeful, mistook for the excitement of a husband secretly planning a surprise for his wife. I spent extra time choosing my outfit, settling on a navy blue dress that looked professional but approachable. The mirror reflected a woman trying to be worthy of acceptance, smoothing every wrinkle, checking every detail. I wanted to look perfect for the breakthrough moment I was hoping for with his family. That night, as we got ready for bed, Nathan was unusually tender. He held me close, told me he loved me, with an intensity that almost sounded like a goodbye. "Tomorrow will be a day you'll never forget," he whispered into my hair, his voice carrying something between affection and guilt. I didn't notice. I just smiled, thinking maybe he finally wanted to make it up to me for 2 years of disappointment and silence. I fell asleep in his arms, carrying the illusion that this upcoming birthday party would be the moment I'd be recognized, appreciated as part of the family. But the reality of the past 2 years told a different story. After the pandemic, I lost my job at the ad agency and had to temporarily work as a waitress at Moretti's. Every holiday, every family gathering, from Thanksgiving, Christmas, Nathan's birthday, to Grayson's engagement party, I became the subject of polite concern. The first family event after our honeymoon was Cousin Lucas's graduation. I spent 2 hours getting ready, picked a modest black dress and minimal jewelry, hoping to blend in quietly. Lillian greeted me at the door with air kisses that didn't touch my cheek, then quickly pushed me toward a group of extended relatives I'd never met. "This is Nathan's wife," she announced to the circle of well-dressed women. "She's in service." The pause before that phrase was deliberate, giving everyone time to process. Aunt Dorothy raised an eyebrow in recognition. Cousin Stephanie let out a sympathetic sound that felt more like pity than welcome. "Interesting," Stephanie said, with a tight, condescending smile. "What kind of service exactly?" Lillian jumped in before I could answer, explaining that I was figuring out my career path while temporarily working as a waitress. She made it sound like I was lost and aimless, rather than simply employed and hardworking. The conversation continued around me, as if I wasn't there. They talked about Lucas's law internship, another cousin's marketing promotion, and Grayson's engagement to a doctor from an affluent family. When someone asked about my background, Lillian smoothly pivoted to Nathan's accounting firm and her pride in his career growth. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a breath from the suffocation. In the hallway, I overheard Lillian telling someone, "We're hoping she finds a more suitable job soon." Nathan deserves a wife who elevates his social standing. That line stung. It reduced my entire identity to failure in their eyes. Thanksgiving dinner 3 months later repeated the pattern, only more sharply. Lillian invited distant relatives, including people I'd only met once at the wedding. When it was time to share what we were thankful for, she emphasized everyone's professional achievements, but completely skipped over me. "I'm grateful for Grayson's engagement to Dr. Claire Bennett," Lillian beamed at Claire, "and for Nathan's ever-expanding client base at the accounting firm. It's wonderful seeing young people establish professional stature." When it was my turn, I just mentioned gratitude for family and health, avoiding work altogether to sidestep any lectures. Dorothy, Lillian's sister, pulled me aside to the dishwashing corner, under the guise of helping, but really to deliver an uninvited suggestion. "You know, Lillian only wants what's best for Nathan. Have you thought about finding a new job, or maybe learning something different? There are so many opportunities for women who are willing to improve themselves." Her words carried the weight of collective agreement. They had discussed my shortcomings and reached a unified solution. Lillian started inserting herself into every conversation, from my job to how I dressed, and one Christmas, while she gifted Claire a beautiful silk scarf, she handed me a book titled Career Success for Women, unwrapped. The message was clear. I forced a smile, said thank you, while Claire giggled at the corner of the table. Nathan, instead of speaking up, just lightly touched my hand in a clumsy attempt to comfort me. He rarely looked me in the eye whenever someone mentioned my job, and sometimes even joked, "Maybe it's time. You should upgrade your career, huh?" I knew he was embarrassed, Nathan's shift at these events was the most heartbreaking part of how things were deteriorating. The man who once loved my independence and strong work ethic now looked ashamed whenever I mentioned my job. He'd quickly change the subject or make jokes about career upgrades, as if my current work was a temporary disgrace, not legitimate labor. Then a new name, Miss Steele, Nathan's boss, started popping up in his stories during family meals. At first, it was just, she's brilliant, very refined, helped me realign my career. But slowly, every word she said became a new standard Nathan used to compare. Ms. Carter's right. Modern women need to know how to invest in themselves, he said during one meal, his eyes glancing quickly up and down my body. Claire chimed in. I'm sure Evelyn would love nice clothes too, if she weren't afraid of grease stains at Moretti's. I smiled, hiding the sharp sting in my chest. I had grown used to being the one who didn't fit the mold. Ms. Steele began showing up at some of the family gatherings, inviting both Lillian and Claire to her company's events, galas, conferences, networking sessions. In the photos they posted, I saw Nathan standing next to her, the camera flash catching the clink of their wine glasses. The caption read, "A fantastic night with the Harrington and Pierce team." I wasn't in any of them. More and more, their conversations about clear financial boundaries and modern marital independence made me feel like I was being erased from my own life. The family group chat became a daily source of humiliation. Claire shared articles about successful women, always with inspiring captions and goals. Whenever I responded positively, she followed up with questions about my career development that felt more like interrogation than conversation. Lillian's friends at the country club added fuel to the public shaming. She mentioned my employment status with theatrical concern, describing my job as a burden Nathan's family was helping him manage. When these women saw me at social events, their pitying looks and over-the-top encouragements about finding my path made it obvious Lillian had painted me as a project, not a person. The constant criticism began to affect how I saw myself in the mirror and in photos. Lillian's comments about my appearance made me second-guess every outfit and makeup choice. I started buying clothes I couldn't afford, trying to look like the kind of professional woman she clearly preferred. My credit card balance went up as my self-confidence shrank. They had succeeded in making me doubt my worth, my choices, and my place in Nathan's life. I knew that if they were hoping to see me fall apart, then the only way to push back was to stand up and reclaim my place. I started job hunting. Anything that could help me shake off the label of not good enough that Nathan and Ms. Steele had pinned on me. The computer screen glowed in the dark room, reflecting my tired but determined face. I created profiles on every job site I could think of: LinkedIn, Indeed, CareerBuilder, even tiny local websites that listed jobs within reach of my qualifications. Before the pandemic, I had worked as an event coordinator at a wedding planning company, handling large ceremonies and VIP clients for 6 months. But when the company shut down due to COVID, I lost my job. Moretti's, the restaurant I once used for event bookings, hired me for evening shifts as a waitress. Later, just to afford the clothes my mother-in-law expected me to wear, I took on several part-time jobs at once. I stayed up late every night writing cover letters. Each one took more than an hour. I'd write, delete, and rewrite, trying to convince the reader that my experience in service and customer care could be a valuable asset in an office setting. The first letter went out in the morning, and just a few hours later, I got a rejection. We're looking for candidates with experience in a medical office. The second came from an insurance company that required a degree in business administration. Within a week, my inbox was full of polite thank you notes ending with, "We've selected a more suitable candidate." One evening, as I sat crying in front of my laptop, Nathan walked by. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said calmly, "Maybe you're aiming too high, too fast. Just start with something smaller, work your way up." He thought he was being supportive, but every word echoed what his mother had always said: "Don't dream too big. You don't belong there." My first interview was at Caldwell Insurance Group. I still remember how it felt walking through those glass doors. Women in light-colored suits walked with purpose, their heels clicking sharply on marble floors with a sound of power. I felt completely out of place beneath their judgmental glances. Mrs. Henderson, the interviewer, glanced at my resume for less than 30 seconds before looking up, her voice cold as glass. We usually hire candidates with an economics degree or experience in insurance. What makes you think you're a fit for this position? I explained my customer service skills, my ability to communicate and stay organized, but she checked her watch halfway through, as if to signal we were both wasting our time. Perhaps you should consider roles that better match your current skill set. The interview lasted only 15 minutes, but the drive home felt endless. I sat in the parking lot, staring into the rearview mirror, wondering if I was just fooling myself. Lillian's voice echoed in my head again. Some people just weren't born for professional environments. That line felt like a curse. But I didn't give up. I enrolled in a community college, night classes in basic management and business communication, using up all the savings I had meant to spend on new clothes. On the first day of class, I realized how out of place I was. Everyone else worked in offices and were studying to get promoted. I was just a waitress trying to catch up. When the professor asked us to interview someone in the field, I realized I had no one to talk to. No mentor, no connections. All I could do was observe, take notes, and stay quiet. Nathan wasn't particularly thrilled when I shared my class schedule. "Are you sure this is worth it? Maybe you should find a decent job first, then figure things out later," he said, eyes still glued to his phone. I gave a faint smile. He didn't understand that sitting in class, writing essays on customer management, was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. My work at Moretti's began to suffer. I showed up late, forgot orders, sometimes accidentally spilled a glass of water. Mr. Moretti asked, "Is everything okay, Evelyn? You don't seem like yourself. But how do you explain that your husband and his family are systematically destroying your confidence?" I just lied and said I was tired. Rosa, the head chef, became my unofficial therapist during breaks. She noticed my red eyes after particularly rough job hunting nights and quietly handed me extra coffee or a plate of food I hadn't asked for. "Studying is great," she said one day, "but never let anyone make you feel ashamed of honest work." The financial pressure from my self-improvement mission created new problems at home. Interview outfits, gas money to drive to other cities, textbooks, and tuition pushed our already tight budget to the edge. Nathan started questioning every purchase, asking if the new professional outfit was really necessary when I didn't even have a new job yet. "Maybe we should just pause all this for now," he suggested, after checking the credit card statement. I stayed silent. His words felt like the final blow to the fragile hope that he might understand, might support me. I started spending more time at the campus library, among shelves of books on business and career growth, forcing myself to absorb every bit of knowledge I could, just to prove I wasn't useless. I was doing well. My grades were high, and Professor Martinez even praised my paper on customer relationship management, asking me to share it with the class. For the first time in months, I felt confident. But that confidence dissolved that very evening when I told Nathan. "Nice," he said without looking up from his phone. "Maybe Mom will be impressed when you finish." I said nothing. I understood then. To him, none of my efforts mattered, unless they impressed his mother. Summer came, and I kept applying for jobs. I made an Excel sheet, color-coded each application, green for submitted, yellow for pending, red for rejected. After 3 weeks, the sheet was covered in red. My final interview at Apex Strategies ended with a polite smile from the recruiter. "We're looking for candidates with strategic experience and analytical thinking." I nodded and thanked her, knowing what she really meant. Waitresses don't get hired to think strategically. I walked out of the building and caught my reflection in the glass. Just a woman in a cheap suit holding a thick folder full of rejection letters. I used to believe hard work would pay off. But in that moment, I started to understand. To them, I wasn't just lacking a degree. I lacked the right to be respected. I refreshed my inbox dozens of times a day, hoping for any sign that someone might see value in the effort I was making. The rejections came like a steady stream of cold messages, each email a small cut into the little faith I had left. Finances started to slip, gas money, application fees, tuition, all added up into numbers that Nathan read aloud every evening during our budget checks. But amid those days, there were a few people whose quiet kindness kept me from feeling completely alone. Mr. Moretti still gave me easier tables, sometimes quietly added a free meal to my bill, and simply said, "Everyone has to start over at some point." Rosa, always patient during our breaks, would listen to my rants, sometimes wiping down tables as she said, "Don't let anyone make you believe you're less than. They're just scared you'll rise up stronger, Tony," the young new hire, often teased me with clumsy encouragements like, "You're the smartest one here. If they don't hire you, it's their loss." Those simple words were the only things grounding me, when everything else around me was trying to drown me in failure. I kept juggling school and work, still scored high in business communication class, still got praised by the professor in front of the whole room for my customer management presentation. But none of it changed the reality. Every time I opened my email, another rejection awaited. "We appreciate your academic efforts, but this role requires banking experience." Even the most entry-level jobs demanded practical experience, a paradox that left me trapped between two worlds. You can't get hired without experience, and you can't get experience without being hired. Moretti's was the only place that still made me feel remotely valuable. But even there, I was wearing thin. Nathan began watching me with a look that mixed concern and doubt. "Still no responses this week?" he'd ask, voice tinged with pity and quiet blame. He stared at the shrinking bank balance with growing anxiety, questioning whether this investment in my future was sustainable. "Maybe you should stop applying for a while," he suggested after checking our monthly expenses. His suggestion was practical, but it felt like he was telling me to give up. Over time, he was home less and less. The photos of him standing next to Miss Steele became more frequent, but I was too exhausted and overwhelmed to notice the shift. Sleep became harder, nights filled with replayed interview mistakes, wondering what I should have said instead, imagining some other applicant dazzling the recruiter while I looked unqualified. I stopped telling Nathan about the humiliations. I just said, "It went okay." When the manager at Westfield Insurance made me wait 2 hours just to say, "You're not technically qualified," I only told Nathan they were still reviewing. I held back the truth to preserve the last bit of respect he had for me, but Lillian didn't hold back anything. She called weakly, voice syrupy sweet, and soaked in smugness. "How's the job hunt, dear?" "Not everyone's made for the professional world, you know," she said, emphasizing every word that made my spine tighten. I tried to stay calm, kept studying, kept sending out resumes. Every morning I looked in the mirror and saw my face more hollow, my eyes dimmer. Lillian noticed immediately during our monthly family dinner, flashing a fake smile. "You look so thin. Must be exhausting trying to find a job, huh?" It sounded like concern, but her gaze was smug with satisfaction. The rejection letters piled up into a thick stack. I had to move them into a new binder. Each page was another attempt to rewrite myself, only to be torn apart again by "not qualified enough." I had submitted 47 applications across 4 counties. Every single one came back with the same message. Their world had no room for me. I'll never forget that Monday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by fragments of my life stuffed into the laundry basket. Waitress uniforms, office dresses no one wanted to hire me in, old t-shirts for staying home. I looked around the quiet kitchen, where the scent of toast and echoes of laughter used to be, now replaced by the slow ticking of the clock. Maybe the worst part wasn't the failure itself, but the moment I started to believe they might be right. The phone buzzed as I was folding Nathan's dress shirt. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Telemarketing calls had been relentless lately. But for some reason, this time, My hand slipped and I picked up. Maybe I was desperate enough to believe in miracles, or just too tired of feeling like the world had written me off. Is this Evelyn? A woman's voice came through, professional but warm, without the usual urgency of business calls. The way she pronounced my name, slow, clear, with a hint of genuine care, made me pause. I'm Daniel Martinez from the HR department at the Regent Grand Hotel. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. My heart stopped. The Regent Grand Hotel. That name brought back a memory from 6 cold months ago, a desperate winter night when I applied for the guest services coordinator position without expecting anything, just another resume thrown into the endless void of job websites. And now they were calling back. We received your application, and I wanted to ask if you're still interested in the opportunity? I had to sit down, my hand trembling as I set the half-folded shirt on the table. Yes, absolutely. I tried to keep my voice steady. I'd love to learn more. Daniel laughed softly, so kindly that I didn't feel like a candidate being evaluated, but like a person being truly seen. Your restaurant experience really stood out to us, she said. People with service backgrounds like yours often thrive in hotels because they understand guests on the most human level. I went quiet, not because I didn't understand, but because I wasn't used to hearing praise. For 2 years, that experience had only been spoken about as a flaw I had to overcome. But now, someone was saying it was a strength. Daniel continued. At Grand Plaza, we focus on creating exceptional guest experiences, and we value staff with real-world service knowledge over just theory. Each of her sentences peeled away a layer of self-doubt I had worn for too long. She talked about career development training, management pathways, comprehensive benefits, health insurance, dental, retirement plans, even tuition assistance for professional certifications. I could barely breathe. At Moretti's, health insurance was a luxury, and retirement was something that belonged to other people. There's one more thing you might be interested in, Daniel added, her tone brightening. This role comes with housing in our employee apartment complex, fully furnished, just 5 minutes walk from the hotel. I had to grip the edge of the table. Free housing. That meant I could leave this house, leave Lillian's watchful eyes, leave the feeling of indebtedness woven into every bill, every silent dinner. 2 hours, the exact distance from here to Grand Plaza, suddenly became the most beautiful number I'd ever heard. Starting salary ranges from $42,000 to $48,000 a year, depending on experience, Daniel said. My current income at Moretti's was barely over $25,000, with tips and overtime included. I understood instantly. This wasn't just a job. It was a ticket out of every judgment that had ever held me back. I know this is a big decision, Daniel said gently, but we were very impressed with your application and believe you'd be a great fit for our team culture. I could hardly believe my ears. Somewhere out there, someone was recognizing the value I had always believed was in me. I'd be happy to schedule an interview, I replied, with more certainty in my voice than I'd had in months. Wonderful, she said, smiling through the phone. Let's set it for Thursday then. When the call ended, I sat in silence in the kitchen, the phone still in my hand. A strange feeling rose up. Hope, a sensation I thought had died a long time ago. I didn't say anything to Nathan, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to keep this to myself. The first thing that felt truly mine, untouched by his family's approval. I wanted to save the news for when I had it in writing. 3 days later, I stepped into the phone interview with Daniel. I locked the bedroom door while Nathan was out, holding a pen tightly and a notepad in my lap. She asked me about handling difficult guests, VIPs, maintaining service standards during peak hours, and I answered smoothly, confidently, because this was the work I had lived and breathed for years. Mr. Moretti spoke very highly of you, Daniel said cheerfully, and we believe you'd fit in well here. Hearing that, I felt a kind of validation, not the kind where I had to prove myself to anyone, but the kind where someone finally saw me for what I was truly worth. That entire day unfolded with eerie perfection. Claire's message came in at 1 p.m. Can't wait for tomorrow night. This birthday party is going to be unforgettable. The words, followed by a smiley face, left me momentarily confused, but I chose to believe that maybe, after everything, they truly did want to make it up to me. Nathan was just as cryptic. He kept checking his phone, smiling that vague little smile, like he was holding on to some secret joy he didn't want to share yet. Mom and Claire have put a lot into this, he said, his tone light but heavy with implication. Tomorrow night will be a night you'll never forget. I smiled along, silently agreeing, though not for the reason he thought. I spent the entire afternoon preparing. I stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing how to say it casually, going over the opening line dozens of times in my head. I have some good news. I just got an offer from the Regent Grand Hotel. My voice in the mirror sounded steady, confident, almost like it belonged to someone else, a stronger version of me, ready to step out of the shadow they'd spent 2 years building around me. I practiced smiling, then softening my tone, trying to balance humility with pride. I didn't want to boast. I just wanted them to know I did it. When choosing a dress, I paused in front of the navy blue one hanging in the closet. Soft fabric, elegant cut, nothing flashy. I ran my fingers along the smooth fabric, feeling its coolness on my skin, and smiled quietly. I wanted to look like the kind of woman Grand Plaza believed in, professional, confident, yet gentle. At Lauren's hair salon, I sat still while she styled my hair in soft waves, the scent of hairspray mingling with the late afternoon aroma of cafe lattes. Lauren looked at me in the mirror and smiled. So, are you in love, or did you just get promoted? You look glowing today, I simply whispered. A little of both is changing. As I was getting ready for my evening shift, the email from Grand Plaza popped up. Job offer, the Regent Grand Hotel. I opened it and read every line slowly, afraid to miss a single word. Position, Guest Services Coordinator. Salary, $45,000 per year, including benefits, staff housing, and a clear pathway to management. I printed 3 copies, folded one neatly into my wallet, like a lucky charm. That night, driving to Moretti's, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror at a red light. I mouthed the line I'd memorized. I have good news. The Regent Grand Hotel offered me a position. They believe in my experience, and they're going to train me for management. I imagined the moment. Lillian stunned, Claire wide-eyed, Nathan beaming with pride. I pictured the whole room applauding. Some part of me still hoped that, maybe after tonight, this relationship could actually begin to heal. Moretti's was glowing when I walked in. The scent of wine, the clinking of cutlery, the laughter of familiar guests. Everything felt so familiar, I almost reflexively said, "Good evening, welcome." Mr. Moretti waved from behind the bar, his eyes warm. "You look different tonight, Evelyn," he said as I passed by. "What's the occasion?" I nodded and answered softly, "Tomorrow's my birthday, and I think I'm about to start something new." He smiled, a kind smile that made me feel like I truly was stepping into a new chapter. In my purse, the Grand Plaza offer lay still, weighty like a promise. I knew that in just a few hours, it would become the key to the door they had tried so hard to keep shut. All week, whenever Lillian made a snide remark, I just smiled. Whenever she said Nathan needed a wife with more social presence, or Claire posted online about how successful women must be financially independent, I'd glance, then chuckle. Nothing they said could touch me anymore, because I knew, on the night to come, everything would change. That night, I ended my shift earlier than usual and stepped out of Moretti's into the cool breeze. Outside, the streetlights shimmered across the wet pavement, reflecting droplets falling from the awning like scattered golden light. I wanted to see Nathan immediately, to tell him I did it, that everything his mother and Miss Steele ever said was wrong. I was worthy. I was good enough. I was valuable enough to be chosen. But when I opened the door and stepped inside, the apartment was silent, dimly lit by the soft yellow light coming from the office. I heard Nathan's voice, low, familiar, mingling with a woman's voice, light and slightly raspy. I froze. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound carried more clearly than I wanted it to. "I'll take care of it before the financial quarter ends," Nathan said, his voice low but urgent. "We need to clean up all loose ends before we move forward." "Good," Ms. Steele's voice replied, sweet but sharp. "I can't have you being dragged down by family issues. You need total focus if you want the VP role." I stood frozen, my back pressed against the wall. Every word from her mouth hit like metal clinking against the floor. "She doesn't suspect anything, does she?" Ms. Steele asked, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Nathan sighed. "No, but you're right. This needs to be finalized soon." "Good." "I already spoke to the attorney. He'll reach out this week. I'll cover the divorce fees. I want everything clean." Before the next board meeting, the air around me thickened. All sound became distant. The hum of the air conditioner, the ticking clock, leaving only those words echoing in my head. Attorney, divorce fees, clean. Nathan gave a soft chuckle, that familiar chuckle he used to share with me on those early married nights. "You really are the one with the plan," he said. "And you're the one I believe deserves that position," Ms. Steele replied, her voice gliding like a promise or a trap. I stepped away from the door slowly, my heartbeat so loud I could hear it in my ears. I walked out into the hallway and leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breath. The smell of grass, the dim lights, all of it melted into a reality so cold it stung my eyes. I had no more tears left, just an aching hollow space in my chest. I looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until a new day, my birthday. The day they promised would be a surprise, a celebration, a fresh start. I laughed, a soft, choked laugh. They had planned to end this marriage with a document, with secret meetings and late-night phone calls. But what they didn't know was, I had also signed a different kind of paper, a new beginning, a life they no longer had power over. I pushed the door open hard, stepped into the house, and walked toward the bedroom. Nathan was still talking, his voice fading as the door closed behind me. In my mind, there was only one sentence, ringing loud and slow, in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. "Tomorrow I'll let them think they're breaking me, when really they're setting me free." The next day, I walked into Moretti's with a strange sense of lightness. For the first time since our wedding, I felt like I was truly walking without my head down. The yellow lights reflected off the glass door, and the little bell chimed as I pushed open the familiar entrance, revealing the warm space that had been my world for the past 3 years. The smell of toasted bread, tomato sauce, and the familiar laughter of regular guests blended together, steadying my nerves. Mr. Moretti stepped out from behind the kitchen, his sun-worn face lighting up like he was greeting family. "Evelyn, you here to eat today?" His voice echoed across the dining room, drawing glances and congratulations when people noticed the birthday cake in the server's hands. I smiled and introduced, "This is my family, my husband Nathan, and the rest of my family." Mr. Moretti shook hands with each person, his gaze sincere, pride clear as he said, "She was one of the best employees I ever had." I caught the flicker of discomfort in Lillian's eyes. She scanned the small room with its slightly worn beige walls, red and white checkered curtains, handwritten menu boards, none of it up to her standard. But I didn't care. This was the place where I had learned my true worth. We sat at the corner table, the very one I used to serve hundreds of guests from. Rosa winked at me from the kitchen window. Tony, clearing a table nearby, gave a thumbs up and mouthed, "Happy birthday." I nodded back, my chest swelling with an emotion I couldn't quite name. But the mood at our table was colder than I expected. Lillian held the menu between two fingers, like it was something filthy. Claire stared down at her phone, only occasionally glancing up at Nathan with tight-lipped smiles. Nathan was different. Every few minutes, his phone buzzed, and he'd glance down and quickly type something under the table. When I asked, "Are you expecting an important call?" he glanced at his mother before softly replying, "No, just a few details for tonight's dinner. I'm coordinating with Claire." "There'll be a surprise," I smiled. Dinner unfolded in a performance so forced it was suffocating. Lillian asked about my community college classes in a strangely sweet tone, nodding approvingly about my perseverance, while Claire let out a small laugh, faking a cough to cover it. I said nothing. I was waiting. Then the birthday cake came out. A white cake with red piping that read, "Happy Birthday, Evelyn," brought over by Rosa with a quiet, "Happy Birthday, Evelyn." I bowed my head in thanks as singing broke out across the dining room. Regulars, old coworkers, everyone smiling, everyone singing. I felt real affection, the kind my in-laws never once gave me. "Make a wish," Nathan said, raising his phone to film. The glow from the screen lit up his face, and for a split second, I believed this might be a night he was truly present with me. I closed my eyes and wished for a new life, a new job, real freedom. When I blew out the candles, applause followed. But in the midst of the noise, I heard the faint sound of leather. The phone that had been filming was now passed to Claire. Nathan pulled out a pale pink envelope, its silver trim shimmering with "From all of us," written in soft cursive. He stood, lifting the envelope with theatrical flair. "I've got a special gift for you. Happy birthday." Laughter, a few oohs from the room. Someone clapped from the corner. Claire instantly raised her phone, aiming the lens directly at me, adjusting the angle to catch every detail of my reaction. "Open it, dear," Lillian said, her eyes lit with excitement. I held the envelope, feeling its unnatural weight. The golden glow from the recently extinguished candles shimmered on the surface of the paper, making it tremble slightly in my hands. I forced a smile and peeled the flap open. The paper tore with a clean, crisp sound. Inside were folded documents, letterhead stamped with the national emblem, bold text clear at the top, "Petition for divorce." I read the words again and again. Each word seemed to grow, overlap, choking the breath from my chest. I looked up. Lillian was grinning, her lips curved like someone savoring a long-awaited victory. Grayson tried to hide his smirk. Claire watched me through her camera lens, eyes gleaming like she was about to witness the performance she'd been waiting for. Nathan, sitting across from me, looked both tense and eager, like a director waiting for the perfect shot. A CT9. I looked at the pale pink envelope in my hand. Something that looked like a gift, but turned out to be a weapon. A strike straight to the heart, wrapped in candlelight and birthday songs. I understood everything now. This wasn't Nathan's plan alone. It was orchestrated by his whole family, meticulously prepared. My birthday party was actually their victory celebration, staged right here, at the very place I had worked, among the people who once respected and cared for me the most. But instead of collapsing the way they expected, I felt something else rise up. Not pain, but clarity. A cold lucidity spread through my veins. I finally saw exactly who they were and where I stood. The clinking of silverware, the soft Italian music in the restaurant, all of it faded. I could hear only the steady beat of my own heart. I glanced down at the documents, each page neatly prepared. The lawyer's name, the filing date, the detailed terms. Even the pen they had laid out was like a cue. Just sign and vanish from their lives. "What are you waiting for, Evelyn?" Lillian spoke, her voice cutting through the now silent room. "Nothing to say? Aren't you going to thank us for your gift?" I looked up, straight into her eyes, then at Nathan. Both of them were waiting for a scene. I picked up the pen, and within seconds I signed. The strokes were straight, firm, unshaken. The ink flowed steadily across the lines, each stroke slicing through the past. I set the pen down, folded the documents carefully, and placed them back in the envelope. "It's done," I said, my voice light as air. Lillian froze slightly, her smile stiffening. Nathan frowned, asking softly, "That's it? You're not going to ask anything?" I smiled. "No need. Because your gift, I actually love it." I opened my purse and pulled out another envelope, cream-colored, bearing the elegant logo of the Regent Grand Hotel. 3 days ago, I was offered the position of guest services coordinator. Starting salary, $45,000 a year, including housing and full benefits. The air in the restaurant seemed to freeze. I continued, each word sharp, echoing into the silence. "Next week I start my new job. In a city 3 hours from here. In a place where my work experience is respected, not ridiculed." Lillian's eyes widened. Claire fumbled, almost dropping her phone. The camera was still recording, but the lens was now pointed straight at his stunned face, reflecting back on the black screen. I looked at them and gave a small nod. "Thank you all. This divorce paper is honestly the most generous gift of freedom I've ever received." The whole room went quiet for a few seconds, before a sudden burst of applause came from the kitchen. Mr. Moretti stepped out, his voice booming. "Bravo, Evelyn!" "Congratulations!" Rosa peeked out from the kitchen window, beaming. "She deserves this!" Tony dropped his towel on the table, clapped, then rallied the whole staff to join in. As applause spread through the restaurant, familiar faces began gathering around. Mrs. Eleanor, the elderly guest who always sat in the corner on Friday nights, gently placed her hand on my shoulder, eyes glowing. "Well done, dear. I always knew you were too smart for this place." She paused, glanced at Lillian, then added, voice lower but clear, "Too smart to stay stuck forever." I nodded, overwhelmed with a kind of genuine gratitude I had never once felt from my in-laws. The contrast was striking, strangers celebrating me, while those who once called me family sat frozen, speechless. Moretti's staff and regulars surrounded me, clapping, congratulating, smiling brightly. Within that circle, I saw their eyes, proud, warm, and real. And at the nearby table, Lillian, Nathan, and Claire remained still, their faces stiff, like they'd just watched a movie where they turned out to be the villains. Mr. Moretti called out, full of pride. "When do you start?" I replied. "In 1 week." Nathan flinched slightly, his face going pale as he realized, while he had planned a party to humiliate me, I had already built my exit. The divorce papers he called a finale were actually the ticket to my beginning. I turned to Lillian, my voice calm. "You wanted to destroy me, but really, you only helped me leave faster. You think this is the end, but no, you just signed the birth certificate for my new life." Mr. Moretti came over, placed a warm hand on my shoulder, and said deeply, "She's one of the best employees I've ever had. Honest, hardworking, beloved by everyone. She'll make any place proud." The entire room applauded once more. Lillian sat silent, her face like wax. Claire clutched her phone, unsure whether to stop recording or keep going, because that video was now evidence of their own cruelty. I stood up, holding 2 envelopes. One, a symbol of ending, the other of beginning. The golden light from above hit the edges of the paper, making them glow like 2 slivers of fate. I smiled. 1 letter to walk away. 1 letter to start again. Nathan lowered his head, his voice tight. You knew about this?" I replied softly. "I did." "Thank you for your gift." I paused, letting the words echo through the room. "I will be free to work where I'm respected. Free to live without being controlled. Free from people who only feel valuable when they're tearing someone else down." The entire restaurant fell silent. Every word I said sliced through the thick fog of pretense like a blade. Lillian tried to regain her voice, clinging to the last shred of control. "This is all so sudden. Maybe this is just one of Nathan's jokes." You two should think carefully before doing anything too rash. I looked straight at her, not flinching. I've been thinking for 2 years. Every snide remark, every comparison to Nathan's ex, to his current mistress, every advice about knowing my place brought me to this moment. And you're right about one thing, I do deserve better. Nathan shouted, trying to cut me off. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath, looked him in the eye, and continued, firm. And, Nathan, if you're about to say I'm making up the affair, maybe you should listen to the recording on my phone. I took out my phone, pressed play, and the audio from last night began. Nathan's voice rang out clearly. That's the conversation from last night, with your boss, right? Nathan froze, his lips trembling, unable to speak. Lillian clutched her purse, stammered, You dare! But her words were swallowed by louder applause, followed by cheers. Well done! Stand tall, Evelyn. The room erupted, while their table sat in absolute silence. The pink envelope with sparkly butterflies sat alone, suddenly pathetic, cruelty wrapped in sweetness. I stood, straightened my dress, picked up my purse. I didn't take anything else. Not the wedding ring, not the papers, not the gift. Only my dignity. I smiled, speaking softly, but loud enough for them to hear. Thank you for helping me see myself clearly. And for showing me that freedom sometimes only takes a signature. I walked out of Moretti's to the gentle chime of the doorbell. The night air was crisp, the breeze mingling with the scent of pizza and aged wine. Every step felt lighter, sharper. My phone buzzed nonstop in my bag. Nathan, Lillian, Claire flashing across the screen. But I didn't open it. I let it vibrate until it went silent. Behind me, people at Moretti's were still clapping, and I walked away without looking back. Ahead of me, the streetlights opened up like a new path. I knew I had just walked out of hell with the poise of an angel. 1 week later, I walked through the glass doors of the Regent Grand Hotel, where the morning light danced on the polished marble floors, and the scent of coffee mingled with fresh lilies from the lobby. My new light gray uniform fit perfectly, and the name tag, Evelyn, Guest Relations, glinted beneath the ceiling lights. The first to greet me was Daniel Martinez, who would become my mentor. She shook my hand with a warm smile and spoke slowly. Welcome. Here, no one asks who you used to be. They only care about who you're ready to become. I smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't forced. My first role was handling VIP guests, a position that demanded finesse and patience. Every time I coordinated a group, arranged a dinner, or handled a last-minute issue, I realized that every little gesture, how I smiled, how I listened, was a legacy from my previous jobs, now placed in a world that finally respected them. 6 months later, I was promoted to Assistant Guest Service Manager with a salary above $50,000. By 8 months, Manager, with a company car and a team of 12 under me. I had my own office, a window overlooking the central square, where every morning sunlight reflected off glass towers, reminding me of that night at Moretti's, when dim yellow light once illuminated a divorce envelope. Now the light was different, clear, direct, no longer trapping me in shame, but instead revealing the road I had taken. In the divorce proceedings, the video Claire had filmed of Nathan handing me the papers in public was deemed a deliberate act of humiliation, and the audio recording of his call with Ms. Steele became evidence of third-party interference in the marriage. Everything once used to disgrace me had become the foundation for justice. I didn't need revenge. I only needed to stand still and let the truth speak for itself. I no longer searched for updates about them, but social media still carried faint echoes. Acquaintances from Lillian's club whispering that the ex-daughter-in-law was now a manager at a luxury hotel. A few people from Nathan's old firm mentioning that the video had circulated internally, and he no longer looked like someone who had won. One evening, while arranging orchids for the lobby, my phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. I'd love to talk sometime, just to say congratulations. I read it, then locked the screen. No anger, no triumph, just peace, as if the past had finally closed in sync with my own breath. That night, I sat by my office window, looking down at the traffic heading into downtown. The city shimmered under a soft drizzle, raindrops stretching across the glass like old stories fading away. I remembered that moment in the restaurant, signing the divorce papers, then pulling out the job offer. Two envelopes, one ending, one beginning, like two heartbeats of the same woman. One beat for the hurt, one beat for the freedom. Now, I live in the light, but I remember the shadows that shaped me. I no longer need to prove anything to anyone. I just want to live honestly, work well, and smile whenever someone asks, "What did you do before this?" I learned how to stand up after being humiliated. I turned off the lights, closed the laptop, and let the city's glow spill into the space before me. Everything was quiet. Everything fit. And in that moment, I realized freedom isn't about walking away. It's about no longer needing to explain why you stayed.